2,
1.
Liftoff. Good afternoon. I'm Jim Eskin, and on behalf of Eskin Fundraising Training, it is my pleasure to welcome you to episode 36 in our nonprofit webinar series, and this is called Breaking Through the Noise. Before I introduce my guest shortly, and then she's going to have a fuller introduction, I'd like to introduce our producer, Michael Argent, to explain to people how they can ask questions. They can do it two ways, Michael, I believe. They can type it in the chat space, but I would prefer to have them see their pretty faces and come on camera. Can you explain how to do that?
Sure. So if you have a question, you can just go ahead and click the button that says raise hand, and then I'll be able to promote you so that you can actually ask your question and speak your question and be on camera. Or you can just ask your question without being on camera. It's up to you. And if you don't want to talk, you can just type it into the Q&A or the chat, and then I'll ask it to Jim for you. So those are the two options you have.
Okay, and I would prefer that you not only talk, but you come on camera. We know we have a handsome audience and we want to see you. Katie's going to get a fuller introduction in a moment, but first I'd like to introduce a new friend and colleague, Katie Lord, who's Vice President of Nonprofit Development with Proof Positioning. First thing I want to ask you, and I'm gonna get in trouble with my Texan friends, but she's in Overland Park, Kansas, and I think we're making plans to do a barbecue search.
Okay.
I think Kansas City's get the best barbecue. First of all, I'm gonna just a quick question. How is the Lord family doing?
Good. We're so lucky right now that the most of us are safe and healthy. My in-laws have COVID right now, but they're working through it. So hopefully,
We want to share our best with them.
yes. So yes, we will. But so yeah, so the holidays are a little bit different, I know, for everyone this year, but still feeling lucky and blessed that we've made it this far, and hopefully, with the vaccine on the horizon, 2020 is going to look brighter, or 2021 is going to look brighter.
Well, we are pleased. Al Hartman, who I think should get a gold star. We've done 100 either live workshops or webinars. Al's been to just about all of them, and he is a fierce advocate of branding and marketing. And this is your night, Al. And by the way, he serves on 2 nonprofit boards in the San Antonio area. Al, I'm going to ask you a question.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you and see you, and you look pretty good.
Yeah.
Who did you make up?
Bill White, yes.
Yeah, Al, what would you like to know about marketing at 5 o'clock that you don't know now?
How to convince the staffs and the boards of how important it is to have a strong marketing program.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you got the right person.
Sense that because the immediate group knows what you're all about, you just assume that everybody does, and you take 1 or 2 steps outside that circle, and it can be pretty surprising how few people really do know who you are or what you do. So,
well, we're going to get to that real early, Al. That's a great question. Do we have Joel around? I wonder, Joel Bapelski.
Yes, sir.
Where are you? I hear you,
I'm
but
right
I don't see you. Okay. But what would you like to? And he is a regular. He used to live in San Antonio, but I guess it was in the name of love, which is a good name. He moved to Dallas. What would you like to know about marketing at 5 o'clock that you don't know now?
I would like to know how you effectively market in a COVID-19 environment. How do you do it?
Okay.
When everybody is faced with fear of this virus?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one more, is Marv Leroy around? I don't know.
So could you say that name one more time? I don't think I see them on the attendees list.
Marv Leroy, it's marv@moremission.com.
I do not see them on the attendees list right now.
It's a pretty good list. I talked to him about 2 hours ago. He's in upstate New York. They had 31 inches of snow on the ground. I wanted him to give an update. And I guess his wife got him the state-of-the-art snow thrower, and he woke up and it wouldn't start. So welcome to webinar 36. We like to say that nonprofits bring out the best in people, and you truly are our heroes. And I'm going to be a little serious for a moment. Katie and I were talking. We like to watch our news in the morning. I think, Katie, the death count now is at 323,000. It's way too high. California has run out of ICU beds. New York City is close to that. And we know this is the season for loved ones to get together. And this is a time of making difficult choices and decisions. And I'm going to add my 2 cents. It's easy. I have my wife here and 2 cats. So we're kind of a small group at the moment, but exercise as much discretion and judgment as you can. And I hate to preach at you, but if you love your loved ones, maybe this case, you can show the love by seeing them virtually or delaying when you kiss and hug them. I'll tell you what, when you do see them, you're going to kiss them and hug them and make up for all those lost opportunities. But this is a time, and we're looking to you, our friends in the nonprofit leaders. You always lead by example. And so we all model our attention. And when you tell a friend or a loved one, you know, that we just don't think it's wise to get together, you're exercising a lot of great judgment and love for them. So that's enough of that. We're talking about breaking through the noise. It's estimated that each person receives about 10,000 messages a day. That's a lot of noise. Katie, my most unpopular part of that is the robocalls. They count there.
Yeah.
And they also calculate that the attention span, you got about 10 seconds to catch someone's, make that first impression.
Mhm.
So now this is something, Al, you say they won't fund you until they know you. Would you agree with that, Al?
So they,
You see the
But
slide
no,
there?
so
They
they-
won't fund you.
no, absolutely correct. They won't until they know you and what you
Okay.
do and what effect you have, a positive effect on the community.
So I'll tell you what, Katie, before I forget, why don't we, and this is a little off script, why don't we move to, we have a lot of questions. We have, I think we're right on track. How do you convince your CEOs, your executive directors, your board chairs, your board members that they need to commit to marketing, communications, and branding if they want to raise money?
That's, I mean, that's an incredibly good question, but and it all goes back to being able to show your ROI. And there's so much great research out there right now. I mean, I can point you all to several different studies that really show the importance of an integrated campaign. But if people, it goes back to exactly what you just said, Jim. If people don't know you, they don't write checks. And it's creating a trust and transparent relationship with what you do. People want to see results, and people give to people. They don't give to institutions or organizations. And so it's really important that you sit down and talk about what an integrated campaign looks like. And so when I'm talking about integrated, I'm talking about multiple channels. So having a social media, a direct mail, and also that integral, in-person, face-to-face, but being able to show what we all know that 40% of our donors are going to stay with us, we're going to retain, and 60% we're not going to. But by having an integrated marketing campaign and by having those that work together with your fundraising, you can inch up and create a higher retention rate. And we know that it's better to keep a donor that you have than to try to constantly be going out and finding new
And
donors.
it's a lot more cost effective.
Right. And so really it does come back down to dollars and cents. It comes down to a good use of staff time and ROI. And it comes back to, we all know it's better to fish in our own ponds than to constantly be casting wider and wider nets. That it's really important that we make sure that we are communicating with our donors, because our best donors are the ones that we already have. And so how do we communicate with them better? How do we create more streamlined approaches? Just because we have a marketing campaign and a fundraising campaign, that doesn't mean that we're working harder, not smarter. We can do both and really increase the lifetime value of our donors. And so, there's some, like I said, some great research out there, especially the Direct Marketing Association. hands over fist, if you spend a little bit of money in marketing, your ROI is going to come back. And there's so many analytics programs out there that you can actually track and show very quickly what's working and what's not. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be a huge investment. If you take a little bit within 1 quarter, you're going to be able to show this is what's working, this is what's not working, and be able to make those small adjustments. But it's through that, you got to spend money to make money a little bit, and being able to show the return on investment, but then also the lifetime value of donors is going to increase, especially when you are talking to them the way that they want to be spoken to, using the mediums and the right messages. That is all about creating the relationship that you want to have with your donors, and is a tool for taking that relationship online and offline. So it's not a nice to have, we have to have it now. People expect to have this type of service, not just from Amazon and all of their online shopping, or organizations that they go to at their grocery store. They expect that from their donor experience now too, is to have that sort of open-ended one-on-one communication. And so it's really important that it starts at the top and works its way down. If your board members aren't sharing, if they're not being voices for your organization, then you're kind of shouting into an abyss, because you have people that can help amplify that message. And that's what your board and your staff need to be doing too, so that you can continue to reach wider audiences
I'll
with your
tell you
message.
what, I love what you're saying. Can you give me a virtual fist bump?
Yep.
Your fist. Thank
Boom.
you. I love what you're saying. And I'm going to add something.
I know.
I'm going to add my 2 cents. It's probably worth 2 cents. Remember, put yourself in the shoes of the donor. They're not choosing between the good and the bad. They're choosing between the good and the good. Communications and marketing and branding and messaging is so, so crucial. So today, we're going to talk about effective strategies. We're going to talk about how to stretch those dollars. And we're going to talk about working your way through the noise. I stole this from the Proof Positioning website. Opportunity doesn't knock, you have to find it. So I'm going to give Katie one question her boss is really going to like. There are a lot of marketing companies out there. What makes Proof Positioning different?
So, kind of in a nutshell, what makes Proof a little bit different is we use psychology and neuroscience as opposed to data analytics. So instead of,
Really? It sounds like one of the movies I saw last week.
I know. So instead of, basically, we can tell you what you should say to your donors, and why you should say it using what medium to have the highest emotional response, and being able to get people then to act emotionally. We want people to act emotionally. We don't want people to think too hard. If you think too hard and your brain starts to hurt, then we don't make decisions, and we don't give, and we don't buy things. And so what we do at Proof is we really help you understand what is a motivation. So what is your donor's why, and talk to them that way.
Al, did you hear that? Don't think too hard. We'd like to welcome you in June 2018 after a wonderful career in higher education advancement. Andrew and I launched Eskin Fundraising Training. I had the privilege of working with very many impressive community business leaders who are absolutely fearless in everything they did in their lives, except what? Ask for a gift. And I like to think that most fear is based on fear of the unknown. And so we declared war on fear of asking for gifts. We believe that we can take anyone who has the Jeffersonian virtues of a knowing head and an honest heart and passion for their nonprofit, and we can make them a fundraiser. We're really proud about the lineup we're having. Do we have Mark Lee in the audience? Mark Lee? And do you have a Mark? We'd like to talk. He's going to be speaking next week on humor. He's a financial advisor during the day and a comedian at night. Mark, are you out there?
I don't see him on the list of attendees right now.
Okay, and how about Alan Paul? M. Alan Paul. Okay, there's some of the future speakers, and we're going to move ahead. What we're going to do is post a very brief summary on LinkedIn and Facebook around 5:05, and then Michael's going to do a magic spin cycle, and he's going to edit the slides and tape, And we're going to post that on LinkedIn and Facebook, and also send it to all of you, and also the people who maybe had a conflict in their schedule. We have a monthly newsletter. Katie's been in it. Last year, I was pleased to write my first book, 10 Simple Fundraising Lessons. And now I got to write another one, 10 Simple Virtual Fundraising Lessons. And I look forward to that challenge. We would like to say that nonprofits are no strangers to financial pressure. They know how to stretch nickels into dimes, but now they have to stretch them into quarters. And we're going to talk about how marketing can do that. But philanthropy is resilient. And I want to talk to some indicators here. The number one indicator of philanthropy is the market. I think the NASDAQ set a new record high. The Dow is up again. It's amazing how well the stock market is did. And donor advised funds are exploding. Record Giving Tuesday is exploding. Katie, I don't know if people know the name Mackenzie Scott. They should know it now. What she has done, she has given away, this is mind boggling, this year, $6 billion a year. And not only she gave it away, it was given unrestricted, all up front, unrestricted, all up front, lump sum. My only disappointment, my former employer got 20 million and it broke my gift record. But I said, you know, you guys, I'll allow that. So the Elmo Colleges got 20 million.
That's kind of an outlier. So
and the United Way here got 20 million. We had a lot of recipients here. So, and I think she is just challenging other billionaires, not only how much you're giving, but how fast you can give it and how you can give flexibility. And it's a great, great story. I'm going to jump ahead so we can get, by the way, there are 1.5 million nonprofits in the country. And there are, Al Hartman, how many in Texas?
About 150,000.
No, listen, there are 100,000. How many in San Antonio?
I think that my resources, the distinguished Espen,
You're going to be
about 6,000 in San Antonio.
You hit it on. Now the next question is to name them all. Bazin's the driver. And we have a little tradition, Katie. Will everybody type in the words nonprofit strong, because our sector is nonprofit strong. So type it in. And Katie, what are we?
Nonprofit strong.
You get an A. And it's a pleasure. I have a huge bio here. If it's okay, Katie, I'm going to condense it so we can.
Yeah, I was going to say.
But she joined Proof Positioning in 2019, so she's relatively new to that, but not to the nonprofit sector. She has served. What I like about Katie, she's kind of like me. She's served in both the worlds of communications and marketing in fundraising. And I'm just feel so privileged. She's a very much a high demand speaker, and she's spoken to the Giving Institute, the Donor Perfect Conference, the Association of Fundraising Professionals, and on and on and on. This is how it's going to work, Katie. We have about 10 or so questions planned.
Great.
If anytime you need some clarification, type it in the chat space. Or around 30 to 35 after the hour, we're going to see where we are, and we're going to bring you on camera to ask more questions. We still have Joel's question to ask, which I think we had planned somewhere. So, and by the way, we're going to do a wrap up too. We're going to show some slides. But I'm going to start, I call it, Katie, the why is there air question. Okay, so with the average person receiving, 10,000 messages a day. I'm getting a headache thinking about that. How in the world can a nonprofit design and implement a communications program and strategy to break through?
It's a really good question. So I think the first thing is really understanding who your audience is, what are some of the similarities from the donors that you have, and creating campaigns and marketing materials that will resonate with the donors that you already have, and creating lookalike audiences. I think where sometimes we get lost is we think everybody is our market. And if everyone's our market, then no one's our market. So it's really being targeted and thoughtful on, okay, who are our best owners, who are our best volunteers, what are their commonalities? It can be very high level, but then taking those kind of characteristics and creating, the donor personas, if you will, the who are you marketing to, and creating messages for those individuals, and really creating a targeted plan. We are bombarded with so many messages that if it doesn't resonate with us, we have to see something. It used to be 7 to 8 times before we would understand it. Now it's 12 times.
Wow.
So because we're getting so bombarded, it needs to be very tailored. And that's where it really does come down to knowing who your target market is. What do these individuals have in common? And then creating a plan and a strategy around them. I know for so many of our organizations, again, everyone can be our market, but if we start talking to everyone, that's when the messages become so watered down or bland, if you will, that we're trying to appeal to the masses, that we're really not appealing to anyone. And so the best way to really stand out is through, which I'm sure we're going to talk about a little bit later, but is through segmentation, and is through really understanding your target market and really doubling down on that, and not trying to chase those that maybe are not your target market, or chase the masses.
Hey, Katie, thank you. That was a beautiful answer. Most of our audience is from small to mid-sized nonprofits. So with limited resources, how can they break through the noise and get the best ROI?
So what I'm going to say is show up. You need to pick and show up where your audience is. So as a small organization, you really need to not try to be everywhere. Because if you're everywhere, again, sometimes you're not maybe keeping up or having the right cadence of communications that you need to have. So I'm going to say pick 2 mediums. So maybe it's email and social media, or it's direct mail and email, or it's face-to-face and email. Get really good and have a good strategy on 2 mediums, and be the best that you absolutely can be on those 2 mediums. And then you can start adding. But until you create plans and strategies around those 2 mediums, I think it's very hard and very to not chase the shiny pennies, if you will, because I think sometimes we're like, oh, there's Amazon Smile and I can do this and I can do that. But it's looking at where we need to spend our most time. Where is our audience? Where are they going to be? And showing up really strong in those areas and creating a plan about that. I'm a huge proponent of a content calendar. So sitting down every month, writing down your campaigns. If there's a special day that relates to your organization, being sure to honor and have some strategy around that, and creating some evergreen content too. So content that you can constantly be sharing. I think sometimes we are very afraid to reshare things that we've already created. Remember, I have to see something 12 times before I'm really actually processing it. So you can share some content that you've created over and over, switching just small things to continue to get that message across before people are actually going to think that they've seen it before. So don't worry about recycling content. I think that that's an area where smaller and medium-sized organizations, if we've created a piece that's really stood out, then we need to be able to reuse that and recycle it and share it on different mediums, because again, people are not going to remember that they've seen it already. It might vaguely trigger, but it's not going to, you're not going to get phone calls like, I've seen a lot of your content being the same. So that's a way to really kind of focus down. Also, just look at analytics. So if you have, Google Analytics is, I think it's a small fee for the premium. At Proof, I think we just use the basic model for Google Analytics, but that can tell you, people that are going to your website. It can tell you where people are clicking. Same with Facebook and all of the different social medias. They have analytics for business pages. You need to be looking at those weekly and seeing what's performing well and what's not. And that, that can take 10 minutes on a Friday is what we do. We have like a 10-minute little micro meeting about it on Friday at Proof. And that can tell us a lot about, okay, maybe what content performed well, what didn't, and can allow us to kind of pivot and to, which is an overused word of the year. I do understand that. But
I
it
don't know,
allows us to
Katie,
adjust.
which is the most overused, is unprecedented or pivot, you
It's
know?
unprecedented or pivot. I know. It's like I'm going to try to strike that from my vocabulary in 2021. But those are kind of easy ways to be able to be responsive and see what's working and what's not working, and to be very agile to the response, in response. And so those are the ways that you can really make big impacts with small kind of changes, small steps.
Right. Well, Katie, remember, no easy questions. Now, you've been a fundraiser, and you know fundraising is about creating, nurturing,
Yes.
building, and sustaining relationships that really
Mhm.
become friendships.
Yes.
What are your recommendations? It used to be done face to face, What are your recommendations on virtual communications to empower us to move to the friendship model?
So what I'm going to say is probably not super popular in the communications realm, but I think is what the truth of fundraising really is. And that is anything digital, virtual, those are all tools that help us move our relationships forward. But again, people give to people. They don't give to robots. They don't give to automated messages as a rule. They give because there is a relationship. And so what we need to do with our virtual communications is to tailor them and integrate them with what we already know about the people that we're communicating with. So again, I think we'll probably talk about it a little bit deeper, but segmenting your donors. So if you have a set of donors that are really, really care about a certain program, only communicate with them about that program. Communicate with people the way that they want to be communicated with. The easiest thing you can do is send out a survey to your donors once or twice a year. Ask them how they want to be communicated with, what is meaningful to them, and then do exactly what they tell you. Don't take it and file it away, but do what they tell you, because again, they want to be heard. There is research out there that actually shows if you ask people their opinion, a truer statement was never said in fundraising, which is if you ask people for their opinion, they give you money. And if you ask for money, they're going to give you an opinion. And that is incredibly true. But people actually give higher amounts and have a higher lifetime value if you ask for their opinion, even in survey form. And so you should be doing that at least once a year. And it can be a basic 10-question survey monkey. It doesn't have to be a huge endeavor, but asking donors what they want, and then really starting to create segmentations and marketing messages around that, around what you hear and how you can kind of group those individuals. Because again, people want to feel like they're heard. And if you can illustrate that to donors, then you are creating a deeper relationship, because you heard what they're saying, you're following their wishes, and you're giving them the type of stories or content from your organization that they want, which then can be taken offline when you're having those other conversations and building that relationship.
Right, that's great. It's our common theme that's already coming through from you, Katie, and I'll embrace it. Less is more. Less is more. So what are your recommendations? I don't care you're a small nonprofit or a huge nonprofit. Less is more. How do you come up with 3 top messages? I don't want 100 pages. I want 3 messages that every board member and staff member can put in their own words and effectively deliver to friends, prospect donors, etc. How would you identify, if you're a nonprofit, 3 top messages?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So it really comes back to your impact and storytelling. So how can you take what you do and, I hate to say this, but suck the data out of it. So how can you, because I live in data, but how can you kind of suck the data out of it and distill it down to a personal story or a personal, people don't give to the masses, they give to individuals. And that's been shown time and time again. So what story can you tell about a family that's been helped, or somebody who received services? How can you take what you do and tell a story of impact? So the things you need to show are, you need to make the donor the hero. Of course, you need to say, because of donors like you in the community, we are able to help people like Cindy, and then talk about one of your programs, show the before and after, the transformation, and try to do it as 30 seconds. I hate elevator speech because elevators are very impersonal, and
Yeah.
I think most of us don't actually talk to people in the elevators anymore because they go so fast and we feel
You
rushed.
can't,
But
you can't even look at them.
no, I was gonna say, but really sitting there and hitting like the 3 points of like, what do we do? Why do we do it? And how you can change a life today. Those are really the 3 things that you need to have in any story or any communication.
Hey, by the way, Katie, do I have your permission to steal that? I love that.
100%.
I love
100%.
that. Hey, we're going to move to the audience in a moment, but I want to sure to move into issues you've been talking are so central. First of all, you mentioned integrated communication strategy, and actually that's been around. How
Yep.
do you think it applies in today's virtual communication world?
I think that you have to, with virtual communication, I think sometimes there's several things. I think what I love about virtual communication is I think we've kind of given more grace and shown some more humanity. So I think sometimes when we're all sitting at a coffee, the donor, we can be very buttoned up and maybe not, show the other aspects of us as fundraisers and as people. I think that that's been really great about virtual communication. But again, what I think is so important is that we're very consistent in our message, both in our virtual world and in our face to face. Again, the don't, and this is not anything new or earth shattering, but I've seen us when we get too focused in a virtual world. Sometimes I see that we as the nonprofit default back to talking about us and what we've accomplished. And we need to be very, very careful that we continue to use the use and the telling the stories and talking in a donor centric way. In virtual, it can be very easy to slip back into some old bad habits where, again, we kind of talk about the organization as the hero and not really the people that are allowing us to do that work through their gift of time, talent, treasure. So we need to be really focused on using virtual as a tool. And again, as kind of just reinforcing what we have online. What I love about some of the virtual communication is there's been some really cool innovation that's come through. So I don't know if anyone here has used BombBomb, but it's my new favorite platform. And I've had several organizations that I work with use it. And it's a little video recording. You can record personalized messages to donors and send them. I've been the recipient of a few, and then I've also worked with organizations that we've been using. But I think that it's using and integrating some of this technology to still create that personalization, and that thank you, Joe and Cindy, for your gift, and taking these little bits of new technology and integrating them back into the personalization of the relationship that we have. It can take small tweaks, and yes, it can seem a little time consuming, but the impact is massive. And then something I'm also just going to say in integrated, I know most of us use this just to text and we don't pick it up and actually speak to people anymore, but I have gotten so many phone calls and made so many phone calls this year, and I'm sure so many of you on the phone have. And I don't know about you, but I think that has been a re-emergence of a strengthening of the relationship of just, hi, how are you doing? What's going on in your world, and how can we be supportive? That is just so.
And I'm going to add, I always like to give the other party the choice. Do you want to make it a Zoom call or just an audio call? And my
Yes.
thinking is, if it's someone I'm meeting for the first time, I want to make it Zoom. But if Katie and I have had 10 conversations, we don't have to Zoom. I hate to be sexist. I think it's tougher on the women. You all have to do a little more work. I have to shave and, and comb my hair. So, listen, we're going to move to the audience, but you have said the word segmentation so often. I'm thinking of making that your nickname, Katie,
Yes.
Segmentation Lord. What does segmentation mean in the nonprofit world?
I mean, it can mean so many different things. I mean, on a basic level, segmentation can be just ways that we divide up our donors, if you will, into buckets of communication styles and messaging to make sure that we aren't blasting everything to everyone, kind of, if you will, the spray and pray model of let's throw everything at all of our donors and hope that something sticks or resonates with them. It's important for us to if less is more, then to make sure that what we're giving is exactly what people want to be receiving. And so segmentation can be based on a program that you do. It can be based on giving levels, because how you talk to a major donor might be different than how you talk to a lapsed donor or a donor that you're trying to upgrade. So it can be based on giving levels. It can be based on communication preference. Maybe you have donors that don't want to receive any communication. So please don't email them, or don't, or you only send them a newsletter. They tell you the cadence that they want to be together. It can be, this is an unpopular opinion, but generational cohort, I think, is really important, not just because of how you're going to deliver it. I don't think that the medium so much matters in generational cohort, but what is going to resonate with a millennial is going to be different than what resonates with someone who is a little bit further along in their career and who might have more disposable income. So being able to talk to those donors in a way that they feel like that they can make an impact is going to be really important. So segmentation can be so many different things, and it can be very personal to your organization, but it's something that you need to do. Everyone should not receive every message that you have. You need to tell stories to specific donors. And I guess the best way that I can tell this story is, and if I have anyone on here who's from an animal shelter, I am going to preface it that this is a Kansas City animal shelter that I'm speaking of, but I have 2 dogs that I adopted from an animal shelter. I'm not a cat person. Please forgive me if you are. Every year I get cat appeals from this organization that I've adopted 2 dogs from. That should be a really simple segmentation of who's a cat person, who's a dog person, or who's a both person. And being able to just send me dog stories or requests would deepen the relationship with me, because I resonate with that. That's something that I want to hear about and I'm more apt to click on and to interact with, versus something that I've never interacted with. And that's a real easy report in some of your communication systems. You should be able to see who's consistently opening what types of messages, and then that can help you decide what to send to who.
By the way, Katie, the best explanation I've heard on the difference between dogs and cats: dogs look at their human companions and they see family. Cats look, which we have too. Cats look at their human companions and they see staff.
Yes, 100%.
You gotta work for a cat. Well,
There's something about the dog needing me. I don't want to work for a cat's love.
unconditional with the dog people. Hey, we want to go to the audience, but before we do, I think we got Al's question. I don't know if we responded to Joel's question up early, and that is, let's face it, it is COVID, COVID, COVID. That's the message and the noise and what people are talking through. So you're a nonprofit that doesn't directly relate to COVID. How do you get your message out?
I think that the tides on that are changing. And from what we've kind of been finding from our constituencies is the COVID narrative is kind of drawing to an end, as far as oh my gosh, COVID is affecting everything, and the paralyzation of some of our organizations of what, of COVID's having an effect. We know that COVID's having an effect on everyone, and it's going to be a long tail, unfortunately, for the nonprofit sector. And we know that. What we're finding is it's so important to not just talk about if you're a direct organization or not. My whole thing is everyone's a direct organization, because COVID has so many exacerbating effects that it's not just frontline workers anymore. It's affected schools. It's affected after school programs. It's affecting food. it's affecting so many different things that I think everyone has a COVID story. But what people are most wanting to hear is how are we as organizations being innovative and creative and moving forward. That's the story that we need to tell, especially kind of as we're starting to, and I think, the first 6 months of 2021 are going to be much like what they are right now. But we need to start talking more about what's the future going to look like, and inviting people to continue to be part of not just what could be conceived as, a crisis period right now, but how the lasting effects of this are going to change the way that we as an organization fundamentally operate, and telling those stories. people are starting to want to hear plans and progress about, okay, I've maybe given all of my emergency funding, so now I'm going to be deciding on who do I continue to support moving forward, and that is going to be on where do I think that my impact can be made, not just today, but in the next few months as well.
Hey, I have a lot more questions I could continue with Katie, but enough from me. Hey, Michael, do we have anybody in the audience that would like to either share one? I'd rather have them come on camera, but they also can just type it in the chat space. We would like to.
So far, it doesn't look like anyone has asked any. Oh, I think we just got one.
Okay.
So this is just in the Q&A from Haley, and she's asking, how do you gain trust as a small nonprofit?
Okay, Katie and I have a deal. If it's an easy question, I take it. If it's challenging, she takes it. This one's yours, Katie.
This one's mine. The most I can say is transparency. What I think we've learned from COVID is it's okay if we don't know all the answers, but saying we don't know the answer and we're working on finding one is incredibly important. What I've seen now is, so here, especially in Kansas City, we have a lot of nonprofits who have said we're not having in-person events until June. So being very transparent with, we're not having our in-person meeting until June. We working with a couple of clients who aren't sure. And so we're making sure that they're very clear about, we don't know, we're going to know by this day, and we're going to tell you. So it's doing what you say you're going to do. It's showing constant results. It's admitting failures. This is something that I personally have a hard time with, because I think we all know that sometimes if we admit failures, we worry that funding is going to walk away. But I was reading a research paper last night, and it's actually when organizations talk about, here's our mistake and here's how we're going to fix it moving forward, their donations have actually increased versus decreased if they show what they've learned, as opposed to just being like, whoops, we messed up. Which we're all going to do. I mean, nobody's perfect. It happens in the business world all the time. And the same should be said for nonprofits. But really, that gaining of trust is creating that consistency of, I know what an interaction is going to look like with you. So I know what to expect when I make an online donation. I know when I call the office that someone's going to get there, they're going to get back to me in 24 hours. So it's creating some of those systems of communication that everyone on the staff understands, but it's also just on that continued transparency and reporting of impact. And when I say reporting of impact, I'm not always like, we served this many people on this day, but it can be so much more about how you impact, one life, and how, you're helping more people like those individuals. But honestly, trust is earned. And unfortunately, I think it can take, a good year to 18 months for, as a smaller organization to, which I hate, I'm going to use quotations because I used to hear this from funders, prove yourself, if you will, but just put your head down, keep doing what you're doing, communicate. It's better, in my opinion, to over communicate than under communicate, because at least it's out there. Even if people aren't necessarily, you don't think that they're hearing you, they really are.
Again, I have plenty more questions, and we're going to address some in the wrap-up section, Katie. But do I see, Michael, I see we have someone else with a question in the audience?
This one's just a quick question from Amy. She's asking, could you please share the name of the paper you referenced on admitting mistakes?
Yes. So I just sent the answer. So one of the books I'm reading that I think has been my favorite book of this year is called Change for Good. And it's about using, of course, I'm going to choose this just because of what I do in my day job. It's about using social psychology and behavioral economics in fundraising. And so I'm reading the book right now. It's in chapter 7. And the book's by Bernard Ross. And I would highly, highly recommend that everyone gets it. But there is an actual article. So as soon as we're done, I can run up Amy and email that to you, what the reference, the paper is.
And I'll put my 2 cents in. You know what a mistake tells me? An organization is willing to take risks and they'll
try new
move
things.
forward. No, listen, we don't celebrate mistakes, but there's also something called paralysis by analysis. And sometimes organizations wait for perfection, and it doesn't exist.
Well, and I love this quote. It's like, perfection is the enemy of good, or is the enemy of done. And I think that that's really true, is we can't not do something because we don't think it's exactly perfect, because perfection is not a real thing. And so we need to be able to execute.
Hey, you said spray, don't pray. Was
Spray
it-
and pray. Yeah.
Go in a little more, because that's a no-no. Go into that a little more.
Yeah. So spray and pray is where you really just put everything out there that you think somebody might respond to. So it's in my opinion, it's kind of trying to be all things to all people. It's putting out, like, you can give it's an untargeted messages, if you want my opinion. It's really putting out there every program that you possibly do, sending it to every donor, constantly bombarding with messages and asking all the time. So it's, we need this, we need this, we need this. It is hoping something sticks. And so it's, you're going to send, 3 different messages in a month, and you're going to send it to absolutely everybody. You're not going to look at past giving history. You're not going to take any of the information that you have in your toolbox, if you will. It's just kind of trying to get out as much material as you can and hope that people respond to it. And that's just it doesn't work. It's actually more time consuming, because the more that you're talking to people and it doesn't resonate, then your trust does really decrease, going back to a previous question. And so I'm less likely to open a message if the past 2 or 3 haven't really had anything to do with me or my past giving history or how I've interacted in the past with an organization. So, I mean, some of those kind of spray and pray messages, I would say, would be like, pick us for Amazon Smile. We, like us on Facebook. We're doing this peer-to-peer campaign. Help us do Giving Tuesday. I mean,
Let's
I
stop
think,
there. Tell me, because I'm sorry, I'm a Budinsky, but we have board members do this, do this. There are so many opportunities and channels. How do you focus and target, particularly when you have limited resources?
yeah, you need to look at you really need to spend a little bit of time in your database. And I say that knowing that, like, I have talked to, I can't tell you how many hundreds of nonprofits, and no one I have talked to has ever been like, I love my database, it's the best thing ever. But what you need to do is you need to spend some time in there and look at, go into your mail, your email campaigns, find out the ones that you should be able to run a report on which ones had the highest click-throughs, which ones had the highest response rate. You need to go back in and look at those, find out what the commonalities are, and repeat those. It's okay to wash, rinse, and repeat if you know that something's successful, versus constantly trying to recreate the wheel. And you need to also be talking to your donors. You really do need to have segmentations of your major donors, your top tier donors,
You're
your
right
mid
on
donors,
too. I was going
and
to
your
say.
low.
You
I'm
got
sorry?
that nickname. You have that nickname, so we wanted to hit hard. Repeat again. It can be by communication preference.
Yeah, it can be by communication preference. It can be by dollar amount given, cumulative given, years given. It can be by age. It can be by if they're a volunteer, or how, if they're a board member. It can be by how they have interacted, what their total giving is. I mean, there's just so many ways that you can do that, but it's really important to, again, if I'm a monthly giver, you should be talking to me as a monthly giver and thanking me as a monthly giver, instead of acting like I've given a one-time gift, and how you're going to talk is going to be different.
I love monthly giving. Hey, by the way, I love the data you have. It's direct mail isn't dead. I'll change
Yes.
that to direct mail ain't dead. Share some of the research on the power of direct mail.
Oh my gosh. So again, direct mail isn't dead. And it says here that consumers aged 45 to 54 are like the best target demographic for direct mail. But I can also just tell you, millennials love direct mail. The fact that we don't like direct mail is a common misconception. We just like it more condensed, like in a postcard or something that's going to drive me back online from the direct mail. But I think it's really important, especially as we're going into the first of the year. 90% of people open direct mail, and they open 20 to 30% of their emails. So
Hey,
that right there.
Repeat that, please.
Okay, so 90% of people will open a direct mail piece that comes in their mail, versus 20 to 30% of emails. So the chances of your email getting opened is 20 to 30%, just because there's so much noise. Where with a direct mail piece, you have a 90% chance of capturing your audience. And then what I think also just really illustrates is that the average response rate from a house list, so the list that you already have, is 9%. And then if you purchase a list, or if you get a list from, of people that haven't given, your average response is 4.9. So almost double. I mean, so again, it's fish in your own pond, and make sure that you are integrating direct mail. It's still a really important piece,
And,
and it's not going away anytime soon.
and my 2 cents is, particularly in the world we're in now, where we're home so much more, I think we have a little more time to open that mail and really look at it. When a couple of years ago, I'd get home at 6:30, 7 o'clock. We have a late dinner.
Mhm.
I didn't give much time. I'm giving a lot more attention to mail now.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, and especially now that the election's over, like my mailbox is kind of empty. So that's been a good thing. And
But you're
again,
not in Georgia.
yeah, I was gonna say that's true. But everywhere, I mean, but people like to carry those pieces. I mean, I can tell you how many times I've put a direct mail piece in my purse. So, and know that I plan on taking an action. And so, making it something tangible, and, using the pictures, and there's, a whole bunch of different things that you can look at with direct mail. But yeah, direct mail still very much should be a part of your organization's communications and fundraising strategy.
Board members like us to, show them proof, and the donors too, measure results. I think segmentation is your first nickname. Your second
Yes.
nickname is analytics. So
Yes.
explain how nonprofits can take advantage of analytics.
So again, analytics is really pretty much every platform that your email platform, your direct mail house should have should be able to keep some of these analytics. But and all of your social media accounts, you should be able, if you have a business or a nonprofit account, you should be able to measure analytics. And those analytics, like I said, at Proof, we look at them weekly. And we have a micro meeting, like I said, 10-15 minutes, but that's where you really sit down and you say, okay, how many people saw our messages? They analytics include, number of impressions, how many people went to your website. If you have website analytics, they can tell you where people are leaving. So are they getting to your donation page? Are they, when are they bouncing off your donation page? Where are they going? How long are they staying? And it's through understanding where you're losing people. That's where you can look at the tweaks and go, okay, we're getting people to leave, Facebook and go to our donation page, but they're not taking the step on our donation page. So we need to rewrite this. Or, wow, we had a really good post on Facebook this week. Let's mark that content and save it, because we need to run this later, because we had, 1,100 people saw this message. So being able to just spend, 10 to 15 minutes to look at that really informs what is successful, what's working and what's not working. And that allows you to plan your content. Also, I'm a huge proponent of, in this social media, so 80% story, 20% news. Yes, 100% agree with that. And it really needs to be focused on making you look like an expert and helping, and you should only be asking 20% of the time for any sort of support, and then educating 80% of the time.
Hey, I'm going to break in here for just a second. Because, there's so many. How does a nonprofit choose a story? There are so many stories. You're telling us less is more. How does the staff and the board choose which are going to be the most strategic stories?
The most strategic stories. So the most, again, suck the data out of it. So when we're telling stories, we need to make them personal stories. But the stories that I think, there's a couple of nonprofits I've seen that have done this really, really well. And it's telling a story of a journey from kind of start to finish, of people being touched by multiple programs or multiple points of entry. So it's following one person through their entire journey, but also weaving that through different social media campaigns. So I saw an organization and I thought it was great. They started the story on social media, and then you had to click to hear the end of the story. And then it drove people to their website, and then they had a video that finished the end of the story. But again, what's really important about the story is making it so that people feel like they can actually make an impact on what's happening in the story. So if I give my money right now, I can buy Janie shoes, or I can make a direct impact on the story that you're telling right now. So bringing it down to that basic level of I don't have to think too hard about how I can see myself affecting this story and creating change. And then again, don't tell stories of groups, tell stories of individuals, and try to also match them to
Let me call you
where
back.
people
About
can
5 minutes.
see
I'm on a little
themselves in the
sub-par meeting
story.
right now, so I'll call you back.
Hey, let me ask, before you talk about a content calendar,
Yes.
Michael, do we have any, I think we had one more question. We have time for another audience question.
So Patrice asked, there are so many different reports available within our CRMs. Can you provide your top 5 favorite reports that have been most beneficial in helping segment analytics of donors properly?
All in a minute too, by the way.
Okay, so the reports that I really love, depending again on the platform. So what I always run is I always run a by donation level. So you know how where by donation level, I guess. So like $25 and up, $250 and down. So I always run those. I always run for segmentation. I always run new donors. So who has come in, because those are your highest risk people. So always knowing who is coming in. And then also if anybody's unsubscribed from anything, or if they have gone a year lapsed, that is an incredibly important donor, because how you're going to talk to a lapsed donor is going to be completely different than how you talk to somebody who is a current donor.
And by
And
the way, I was taught you love anyone who tells you about their change of email address. Think about it. I mean, we love those people, and you get a show. I mean, that's a wonderful signal.
Mhm. One of my favorite reports, and it's actually something that you can actually utilize outside of your CRM, is I love the Fundraising Effectiveness Project report.
Yes, yep.
That to me is that right there segments your donors for you, in my opinion, because that shows you gaps in donation levels. It can show you where you're overperforming and underperforming against national averages. So that's personally my favorite report, and you can actually upload that back into your CRM. It takes about 30 minutes to run. So that would be where that would be where I would start as far as segmentation, because it naturally segments people who give multiple gifts. There's just so much in that report. But also knowing, one of my favorite reports is also knowing the frequency, donor frequency. So knowing who your donors are that give to you multiple times throughout the year, those are the people that you need to be talking to, because they're coming back and back and back to you. So you need to be able to give them more and more opportunities to engage with your organization.
Can you,
Crazy Effectiveness Project.
we're into our 2-minute drill, but take a moment to go again over what a content calendar is.
Okay, so a content calendar is it can be super basic. My favorite one is there is a content calendar available through Hootsuite. They're a social media kind of planning tool. They have a free version, but they also, if you go to their website and you type in content calendar, they have a content calendar that you can download. But it basically lays out a month for you, and I would look at it on a month-to-month basis. It's where you will type in, this is when our invitation to our gala is going out. This is when we need to kick off our social media peer-to-peer ask. And then you can fill in, maybe it's your organization's awareness month. And so you're going to fill in certain facts and posts that you're going to create. It really holds you accountable to creating content or sharing content. So about your organization, it helps you go, okay, is 80% of our content just sharing about what we're doing, and then 20% asking, how are we asking? Are we showing a video versus pictures versus graphs? It allows you to look at a month and to really plan out what your content's going to look like. It's also something that you can then kind of work ahead, fix it and forget it, if you will. So you can set things up to automatically be posted and or sent. And it also lets you understand the cadence of how you're communicating with your organization. So you know that if an email is going on Tuesday, you don't want another email to go on Thursday, or you don't want a message that is completely different from the email that they just received to go on social media on that Thursday. You want it to be something that's kind of in tandem. So it creates a continuity. And then it also allows you to go back and look at and circle, okay, this content did a really good, performed really well, or wow, this content did not get any engagement, so we just need to take it off and not do it again. But
Hey,
it's just a month.
we might work you overtime. Michael, do we have one last question? And then we're about to wrap up. I see.
We do. We have one more from Haley, and she's asking, How do
I
you
like
determine don't? Oh, sorry. What was that?
I like Haley, so let's let that question in.
So
That was okay. I will tell you that one's really hard. That's something that we do for clients, and the answers are actually completely different based on different types of organizations. But the best thing that the one thing I can tell you is this: don't do perfectly round numbers. People give more to odd numbers than they do like 25, 50, 100, 150. Have it relate to something that you can quantify within your organization. So maybe it's like $37. People also love numbers that ends in sevens, by the way. There's been research on that, that if a number ends in 7, people are more likely to choose it, which I don't understand the thought process behind that, but it is one. But pick numbers that are variables of something. So like 18, 36, and start and play around with those. Have no more than 4 choices, and then a 5th with an open box. If you start to list too many choices, people get overwhelmed and they're naturally going to go to the lowest common denominator. Or if you list 4 and then leave a 5th open, they're more likely to pick something in the middle. So that's what I can tell you. But as far as what is exactly a good amount, that's really hard, and it can be really personal based on different organizations, and also how long your organization is around, what your budget is. All of those things actually do have a
Haley,
factor.
the time has just flown by. Thank you so
It
much.
has.
And
Thank
with
you.
that, I'm in the business of asking. I want to have you come back, okay?
Oh, thank you.
This has really been a very, very informative, enjoying discussion. We want to wish everyone happy and safe holidays. And guess what? Guess whose birthday's tomorrow? And not me. It's not my wife. Tomorrow, I would say he's close to the person of the year. He's going to be 80 years old. And we're going to all wish him. I think he's been, I think you could call him the person of the year. Dr. Anthony Fauci is celebrating his 80th birthday. I saw him get the vaccine on TV. I forget, I think it was yesterday morning. He rolled up. And again, happy holidays. These are going to be holidays like we never had before, but maybe next year. Again, if you're not seeing the loved ones, when you do see them, you're just going to hug them and kiss them, whatever the X factor is. But I want to thank Katie. I want to thank everybody in our learning
you, Katie.
community. Michael, so you're going to do a spin dry. We're going to post a summary on LinkedIn and Facebook. And then Michael usually gives us time to drink 1 or 2 glasses of Zinfandel. And then we're going to post the recording and tapes on Facebook and LinkedIn. And again, all the best for the holidays. Be safe, Katie. This has been
Thank
wonderful.
you, everyone.
We have a barbecue date sometime.
We do. It's happening in 2021.
Hey, good night, everyone. Thanks.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you too for great comments.
Great. Thank you. Michael?